If you're buying a house in Canada right now, you have probably noticed that there are some significant problems in the housing market right now. We have a housing crisis in Canada, and on this episode of Bold Prairie Real Estate, I want to get to the bottom of it. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bold Prairie Real Estate, where I educate you all about real estate. If you're new here, my name is Matthew Pfeiffer. I'm a real estate agent from Regina, Saskatchewan. And before we get into talking about this housing crisis in Canada, I want to help you become a homeowner. I have partnered with my good friend and YouTuber Conrad Neufeld, along with Manulife Bank, to gift one person their entire down payment. That's right, we're going to give you your down payment. That probably make buying a house a whole heck of a lot easier. Now this contest only runs till August 6th, so you've got to get on it pretty quick here. I'm going to put a video explainer as well as a link to the contest in the description below, so check that one out. By the way, YouTube really likes it when you hit the like button, so help me out with that. Hit that like button right now, and you're there, so you might as well hit that subscribe button for me too. Canada, we got to talk because there's a problem with the housing market. And that's what I want to talk about on this series of videos. Right now, it's a two-part series. Maybe if this is something you guys like, we may end up doing a third part in the future. So if you have additional things you'd like me to cover, put them in the comments below. But part one in this video series, we're talking about the lack of homes available for people in Canada and what the government has tried, and in many cases failed to do, to address this issue. The second part, we're going to get into how the media portrays the Canadian real estate market and what's actually happening versus what they tell you is happening. But as always, before we get started into this housing crisis video, let's tell you another terrible joke. And that is, why can't pirates say the alphabet? Because they always get lost at sea. If you have a terrible joke that I can use in a future episode of Bold Prairie Real Estate, put it in the comments below. If you are buying a house right now, or you're thinking about buying a house in Canada, you might already know this stat, but Canada has the fewest number of homes of the entire G7 per 1,000 people. That's not homes for sale, that is homes to be lived in. Canada has the fewest number of homes per 1,000 people of the entire G7. The average is about 470 homes per 1,000 people. The Canadian average, 424. And it gets worse when you look at Canada's biggest cities. In Vancouver, it's 404 homes per 1,000 people. In the GTA, it's 360 homes per 1,000 people. There simply is too much demand for the housing supply in Canada, and that's been a huge driver of the price appreciation we have seen. And to put this problem in perspective, they've said that Canada would need to build 2 million new homes just to get to that G7 average. Typically, we see about 250 to 300,000 homes built per year in Canada. In other words, we need nearly a decade's worth of construction just to get Canada to the G7 average for number of homes available per 1,000 people. And this problem likely isn't going to be getting any better anytime soon. It's probably actually going to get worse in the near future, because the government is expecting to welcome nearly 1.3 million new Canadians to Canada over the next 3 years. And by no means am I saying immigration is bad and we need to stop immigration. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying we already don't have enough houses in Canada, and now we're going to bring in record levels of new Canadians, welcome them to our country, and we don't have a house for them to live in. That's going to continue to put upward pressure on prices, and it's going to make this problem worse unless we significantly increase the housing supply in Canada. One major problem we have in Canada is the different levels of government aren't necessarily responsible for the specific aspects of the housing market that they're looking to solve, and at times they even work against each other. The building permit process is almost entirely run by municipal city governments, so that means both the federal and the provincial government have very little input or control over this process. And the building permit process can be long, cumbersome, and full of pitfalls. You have a myriad of zoning issues and then potential pushback from communities. NIMBYism, not in my backyard, is a significant pushback that often municipal governments have. Maybe a developer wants to knock down an old building and put up a brand new building of condos or something like that. That is often something that the existing community will push back against. For example, in my area, I bought a house that backed onto green space. I'd be awfully upset if all of a sudden the city came around and wanted to put a condo up behind my house. I bought that house specifically because I wanted that green space. So I would be part of this problem if the city were to come and do that. Municipal governments for years have been pushing to have more dense cities, and this makes 100% sense. It not only makes the city more environmentally friendly, it's easier for the city to provide services and transit. It's also a more efficient way to build a city. But we have seen time and time again, this is not what Canadians are looking for the most part. In the GTA recently, 60% of home sales have been single-family homes, and this has been a trend for a number of years, while new construction starts have only been 20% for that single-family home. That means there are way more buyers than there is supply for single-family homes in a number of Canadian cities. But we also have issues where entire areas are zoned for single-family, and we don't have the ability to make those cities denser because of that residential single-family only zoning. Meanwhile, the federal and provincial governments typically want to see higher levels of immigration to sustain and increase economic growth. But since they're not responsible for the issuing of those building permits, they're kind of fighting against each other. The federal and provincial governments are trying to bring in more new Canadians, while the city has got a backlog of building permits and simply cannot approve those construction projects fast enough, or they just don't approve them at all, meaning that you've got the federal provincial government that want to see growth. Well, they cannot get those houses built. It's not their responsibility. So these three levels of government are basically just fighting against each other with maybe different priorities, or they just don't have the responsibility to enact the policies needed to continue that immigration growth. In 2019, the federal government decided to step in and solve the problem, helping out first-time home buyers finally. They launched what they called the First-Time Homebuyer Incentive Program. But when it launched, I didn't think it was a great program, and I still don't think it's a great program. There's a couple of major reasons. First off, this doesn't help anybody qualified to buy a house. So if you were not qualified, if you didn't have the income or you didn't have the down payment, well, this program didn't help you with that. You already had to have at least a 5% down payment, and then they would match it up to an additional 5%. Or if you were doing new construction, they would add 10% to your down payment. But if you didn't qualify, this program didn't help those first-time home buyers. And the biggest obstacle is, of course, saving up that down payment can be very challenging for a lot of buyers. So this program didn't gift you a down payment. In exchange for this topped up down payment that the government offered, they took an equity stake in your house. So if they gifted you a 5% additional down payment, they took a 5% equity stake in your house, meaning that when you went to repay this loan, which had to be repaid when you sold the house, or you could repay it anytime you choose, you had to repay 5% of the value of your home back to the federal government. So if you did renovations to improve the value of your home, or it went up in price like we have seen here for the last couple of years in Canada, well, you give 5% of that back to the federal government. I've done a more in-depth dive looking at this program and how the numbers work out. So I'll put a card right here. You can check that video out where I do a full breakdown, a couple different scenarios to see if it would make sense to use this program or not. But another big challenge for this program was that you were capped at a maximum purchase price of $500,000. And in a number of Canadian cities, that simply isn't going to be enough to buy much of anything at all. And so they did rejig it where you could, in select cities, I think it was Vancouver, Montreal, Victoria, and Toronto, you could have a maximum purchase price of $750,000. But the numbers show how much of a failure this program really was. The government anticipated over 100,000 people to use this program. To date, 2 years later, less than 10,000 people have taken advantage of the program. In Toronto, less than 40. In Vancouver, less than 10 people in 2 years have used this program to help them buy a house. But this was the government's idea of helping first-time home buyers, and it sure seems like it was a complete failure. Right now in Canada, governments of all stripes across all provinces have typically tried to address this housing crisis by reducing demand. They increase taxes or add taxes, things like speculation taxes, foreign buyer taxes, we have stress tests, we have land transfer taxes. These are all things that will discourage demand, but none of these policies really address supply. The only one recently that I have heard on at least a national level or a larger scale is vacant property taxes. So the idea is that if you leave your home vacant, there's going to be a tax to do so, and that will encourage people to either rent the house out or put it up for sale. But jurisdictions already do have vacant taxes in place, and so far it doesn't seem to have made a significant difference in the housing supply. So either there are fewer homes being left vacant than we thought, or maybe these taxes are not high enough to encourage these buyers to either rent them out or put them up for sale. I also find it very interesting that in the jurisdictions in Canada that have some of the most prohibitive, demand-suppressing policies and taxes, they typically have some of the highest house prices and the fewest number of homes per 1,000 people. And that's because you can't just address demand and suppress it like crazy without addressing supply. Clearly, just trying to reduce demand is not solving this problem we have in Canada. So what do I want to see? There's a couple of things that I think would really help address this problem, and I don't have all the answers, so if you think there's a good solution, put in the comments below. The first thing is we have to find a way to help first-time home buyers get into the market, because if they can't get into the market, everything else slows down. The people that want to move up to bigger homes, they don't have as many people to sell that house to, and people wanting to downsize don't have the ability to downsize and have somebody take that spot, because the person that was going to take that spot, move up to the bigger house, can't sell their house because there's no first-time home buyer for them. So we need to address first-time home buyers. I'd like to see maybe an option where lending practices, it's easier for those to get those mortgages than it is for, say, the investor buying their 10th home. Let's make it easier for first-time home buyers. Maybe let's find a program or a way to help them get that down payment saved up, because that of course is one of the biggest hurdles to buying a house, especially in some of the larger cities where your down payment might need to be $100,000. How can we go about helping those buyers have that down payment ready to go? In my province in Saskatchewan, one program we had that I thought was phenomenal, unfortunately we don't have anymore, but if you finished a higher level education, whether it was a trade school or you got a university degree, the government has a tax incentive where they would give you tax credits for X number of years or up to $20,000. Well, you could convert half of that into the down payment on a house. And I know in some markets like Toronto, you're saying $10,000 isn't going to help me at all. Well, here in Saskatchewan, where house prices are around $300,000, that was a huge leg up. If you had a couple that was looking to buy a house, they could use this program, each one of them, to have a $20,000 down payment. That's enough for a 5% down payment on a single family home in pretty much anywhere in Saskatchewan. That buys you a really good house. So I'm not exactly sure how we'd implement that on maybe a national level, but I think that would be a really good start to help first-time home buyers. They've already got their education, now they're ready to buy a home. I think that would be a good leg up. The next thing we need to address is the housing supply. There simply are not enough homes for people to live in Canada. The numbers don't lie. We don't even have the average compared to other countries in the G7, and many Canadian cities are well below that average. So until we address this supply issue, prices are going to continue to rise and homeownership is going to be even harder in Canada. So do we have to reduce barriers? Do we have to make it easier for developers to build houses out? I don't know if it's reducing taxes or just simply red tape, but until we reduce those barriers and allow builders to build more houses, there's going to be a continual problem and prices will continue to increase, and we'll see these crazy markets we've got because there's just more demand than there is supply of homes. Yes, we need to increase supply of homes, but we also have to build houses that people want to live in and that they can afford to live in. We've gotten pretty good at building condos, we've gotten pretty good at building larger, more expensive homes, but that middle area seems to be where we're not very good at building houses that people want to live in and they can afford to live in. So we need to find a way to get that lost middle, I've heard it called, get that type of housing product available at a price point that those buyers can afford. So until we get that, we're going to continue to have these problems. Another option might be looking at homes with income suite possibilities. So whether it's laneway suites on top of detached garage or basement suites, this kind of solves two problems in one. It allows a buyer to buy that house and have that single family home while having an income suite to help keep that house affordable, reduce their monthly mortgage payments, plus it provides a rental suite for somebody. We have limited rental options in a number of Canadian cities. This would solve two problems in one. So we need to find a way to get that type of product built more consistently. I actually think a lot of buyers, especially younger buyers, this would be very appealing to them, have lower mortgage payments, but still have that single family home. It's also probably very, very appealing to families that want to live with their extended family, whether it's grandparents or their parents. Having a suite for them could be very appealing for those types of people that want that. That's a look at the inventory problem in the Canadian housing market. There simply is just not enough houses to supply the amount of people that would like to buy houses. In part 2, we're going to take a look at how the media looks at the Canadian real estate market versus what is actually happening, because those are two very different stories. If you want it as well, you can check out this video right here. That's gonna be my most recent Canadian housing market update. As always, guys, thanks very much for watching.